Welcome back to Good Day Columbia. The nation pauses today as we remember the terror attacks 13 years ago. Since then, several agencies, first responders, and different branches of the military helping to protect our nation from any potential attacks. Major General Bob Livingston is here to talk about the role South Carolina National Guard has had in the wake of the global war on terror. Major, thank you, General Major, thank you so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Frandy.
As we think back on this day, one of the questions I remember my co-anchor were talking about is remembering where we were when it happened.
Right.
Take us back to that time for you. Do you remember what you were doing?
I sure do. And I'm what you call a traditional National Guardsman in that I have a civilian business too. And I was at work, just kind of a normal day. And somebody said, you know, airplane crashed into the one of the towers. And so we found an old TV back in the junk somewhere and set it up in the conference room and started looking. And wow, just the day unfolded and
Yes.
Life changed as we knew it. Pretty soon I was activated on a Homeland Security mission and been heavily involved in the military since, as the entire National Guard has been.
And speaking about that, you know, since those attacks, the National Guard, like you mentioned, highly involved, keeping our nation secure. Summarize for us some of the operations that the Guard has been a part of since 9/11.
Well, and the Guard nationwide has been a part of the entire effort, both in the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. In fact, back in 2005, 2006, the National Guard had the primary combat role in Iraq. So the Guard has been very integrated into the missions over there. South Carolina has been both in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Our attack helicopter battalion was one of the first units to go into Iraq. Our engineer battalion was in Iraq. Our 169th Fighter Wing actually did the destruction of enemy air defenses as they went into Iraq during the initial. It's huge. And then they went and did the same thing in Afghanistan and provided close air support. And then we were some of the first training teams to go into Afghanistan. And of course, then we had the great 218th Brigade, which I was privileged to lead, going in and doing a advising and training mission. So just a lot of involvement. And we're still there today, but not quite as many people.
Talk to us about the different type of programs that have been established in the aftermath of 9/11 that you all have established to help with this fight on terrorism.
Well, you know, we fight it on two different levels. We fight it here at the state level, and that it's tied throughout the national network. And the nice thing about the National Guard is we kind of bridge that gap. We have the full-time military piece that we deal with, but we're also able to deal directly with law enforcement. And you know, because of Posse Comitatus, our military doesn't deal directly into law enforcement, but our National Guard bridges that gap. So it's really works well here in the states. And then across the water, we continue to support the missions. And the big thing we do across the water, I mean, we fight combat, we do those kinds of things, but it's relationship building. Right. And by building these relationships, we can influence our friends and therefore influence our enemies.
And we know today, Major, you're going to have to deal with some individuals who've lost family members, loved ones.
Yes.
How do you all help those soldiers and the men and women who may come to you today and say, you know what, I'm just not feeling it today?
Well, and this is a primary concern that we have, and we have, of course, those families that have their soldier or airman have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and we never forget them. We never forget those stories, the great sacrifices and the great contributions. But we have those that come back, and everybody that has been there comes back permanently changed. You know, some of them maybe even for the good, but they're different. And then we end up about 10% of our soldiers or airmen really have some continuing issues, and we've developed programs both with the state, with the state mental health, and on the federal level with the VA hospital, with the military medical system, and with our own resources to address some of those things that where people just don't feel right. But the big thing, and it's all about personal relationships. Right. It's knowing our soldiers, knowing our families, and when we do know them, we can recognize things and we can help them through it. Right. You know, they have to solve their own problems,
But they
but
have
we
help.
can help them, and
Gotcha.
they're our family, and they truly are our families.
Wow. General, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Hey,
Really do
it's
appreciate
great to
it.
be with you, and thanks for remembering the stories of all our great heroes.
Absolutely.